copies available, and no hard copies available of my remarks, which will be brief. These are all hard acts to follow with all the presentations this morning, the video presentations. This whole problem with Islamophobia and its threat to freedom of expression, it's one example, but there's a similar phenomenon going on other fronts. One of the biggest ones is this whole notion of homophobia. And as Gail mentioned, a phobia is an irrational fear. So, what would homophobia mean, actually? It would mean somebody would be homophobic if they would be afraid to be in the same room with a gay person or afraid to shake the hand of a gay person, an irrational fear. But that's not how the word gets used in public discourse. So when the provincial government passes a law that violates charter freedoms, that violates parental rights in education, you get this phenomenon where people who criticize the law are denounced as homophobic. And it's the same cheap shot name calling that stifles debate. And when you stifle debate, you also stifle thought. Because when everybody thinks alike, nobody thinks very much. You have the same, another phenomenon that relates to this is the elevation of feelings, where rather than recognizing that we are adults and we think and we reason and we seek truth, we love truth, we strive for truth, and one of the ways that you get truth is through debate. And this debate gets silenced if you elevate feelings and say, well, we all have a right to not have our feelings hurt. And that is one of the biggest threats to freedom of expression. And it's at play with this Islamophobia stuff that's going on, where you have people saying, well, you know, if you say that radical Islam or violent Islam or fundamentalist Islam or jihadist Islam or Islamism is a bad thing and is committing atrocities and crimes and so on, and there's this notion, well, that really hurts the feelings of Muslims, therefore it shouldn't be allowed. But the moment you allow hurt feelings to be elevated to some sort of a legal right, you no longer have freedom of expression. So, in other words, if I have a right not to be offended, not just a desire, of course we all have a desire not to be offended, but if I have a legal right not to be offended, then you do not have freedom of expression. Vice versa, if anybody in this room has a legal right not to be offended, then I don't have freedom of expression. These are two opposites. You cannot have, yes, you can have a desire not to be offended. Nobody wants to be offended. Nobody wants to be insulted. That's quite legitimate that we as people, I don't want to be offended or insulted. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. Okay. But to elevate that to a legal right and say, well, I have a right not to be offended, not to be insulted. If that becomes a legal right, nobody has freedom of expression. So you see the same thing with Islamophobia, homophobia. You see this extended to the abortion debate, where you have campus pro-life groups that are peaceful, they're not violent, they want to get their message out. And so, well, your message is really offensive, it's hurtful, your message makes people feel uncomfortable, therefore, we're going to shut you up, we're going to silence you. And so the Justice Centre is involved with court cases all across Canada defending the free speech rights of pro-lifers. Why? Because we're pro-life? No, we're not. The Justice Centre takes no position on abortion. We do take a position for freedom of expression. And if you give up and throw any group, whether it's critics of Islam or critics of feminism or critics of homosexuality or critics of abortion, if you throw any group of critics under the bus, you are undermining everybody's free speech rights. So you have to stand up for the speech that you abhor, the speech that you disagree with. That's what it's about. As Chief Justice McLaughlin wrote in one of the decisions, the Zundel decision, which says majority opinion has no need of constitutional protection because majority opinion is tolerated in any event. So that's not what it's there for. So we live in dangerous times. The attacks against the free society are aggressive and strong and sustained. What's the solution? Solution is simple and hard. Simple and easy are not the same thing. The solution is to continue to practice courage, to speak up for truth, or speak up for truth as you see it, to not be intimidated, to not be silenced, and to not give in to the name calling. We live in, I'm 50 years old. I don't know if that makes you old or young, you get different opinions on that, but it's very different from what I remember in my teens and my 20s. Yes, there was some name calling back then, but it wasn't nearly as much as today. Today, there's this litany. You know, you say something somebody disagrees with, and immediately you're racist, sexist, homophobic, bigot, so on and so forth. And the name calling is more aggressive and more vociferous, I think, than what it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And it's having some success in silencing people, and that's too bad. Because if you allow yourself to be dominated by that name calling and you let that influence you and you let the name calling censor you and silence you, that's how our freedoms are going to go down the toilet, is by giving in to that name calling. So the solution is to keep on speaking the truth, speak out, you know, the truth, or the truth as you see it, the truth as you believe it. Continue to speak up, be courageous, and don't be intimidated by all of the name calling. And if we persevere, then in the long run, the free society can survive. It can, but it's up to us to continue to speak the truth and to be courageous. And on that note, I will conclude my comment. I'm going to pass along a little sign-up sheet if anybody wants to receive the Justice Update, which is our email newsletter. I'll pass along a sign-up sheet for that, and we send that out about 2 or 3 times a month, newsletter about our activities and court cases and so on and so forth. So if you'd like to receive that, you can sign up. And my thanks to the organizers for the invitation to be with you today. Thank you very much.